Hi everyone, we've come to that point at the end of the month where we're going to uh, examine our poet of the month in a little bit more detail, and you are going to take on the task of poetic analysis. I know this is the first time and it's a little bit of a difficult task. So what I've done is I've created for you a document that will allow you to go through the step-by-step process of poetic analysis and allow you to also kind of complete the assignment as painlessly as possible. And that is my hope. But let's first start with how we're going to do this. I'm going to include a copy of AP Language and Composition Rhetorical Terms. And this is poetic and rhetorical terms, things that we use to determine certain aspects of poetry, things like rhyme scheme and paradox and metaphor and all of those different elements of poetry that we're going to come across in our examination of poetry. And that's going to come in handy as we go through the sheet. So you'll see there will be a Google Doc attached to the assignment that will have a copy of this sheet. And the first thing I want you to do is go to a file and make your own copy. So you're going to make a copy of the document and you're going to change it to your name. And I'm going to say Emily Dickinson Analysis. So I am going to analyze an Emily Dickinson poem. Okay, so I click OK, and now I have a brand new document. Eventually, as it's loading, I have a brand new document of everything that I just had, and I'm able now to mark this up as I choose, so this becomes my document. I'm sure you guys already know this about Google Docs. So I'm going to first put my name. Sorry, I'm moving a bit slowly here. And then I'm going to choose one of the Emily Dickinson poems that are out there. I'm going to choose the poem that we did recently called Narrow Fellow in the Grass. Okay, so that's the poem I choose. So the first thing I want to do based on the poem that I've chosen is I want to give a brief analysis of the title, what I think the title means. Now, because it's Emily Dickinson, we know that she doesn't actually have titles of her poems. She only has the first line, but still I'm going to try to figure out what this poem means just based on the title before I've even started my analysis. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type out my few things on the title of the poem and my thoughts about it, blah, blah, blah. Then I'm going to get to the serious business of reading and analyzing the poem. Now, it is my thought that you should read the poem 3 times over in order to truly understand the poem. The first time you should read it once completely without ever stopping and slowly and then you should read it again, slowly identifying rhyme, meter, language, different terms. And then the third time, you should read it very carefully with the purpose of understanding the deeper meaning of the poem. So the next thing I'm going to do on my poetic analysis form is I'm going to actually copy and paste the poem into my document, because how can I possibly read and mark up a poem without having it right there in front of me? So I'm going to copy and paste that into my actual document where it says paste poem here and mark it up. So I have the poem now in the document, and anything that I identify, like Narrow Fellow in the Grass, I'm going to take that and I'm going to highlight it. You know, that to me becomes an important part of the poem. So I want to make sure that I've identified that and I've underlined it. And perhaps right here in the margin, I've put the object in question. So I'm starting to actually analyze the poem right here within the reading and the context of the poem. Now I'm going to be looking for you to actually mark up the poem. Another way you can do it, and you might find this easier, is actually print out the poem and mark it up by hand and then take a picture of it and post it right into this document. That would work fine as well. So I've gone through the poem and now I'm going to read it a little bit more closely, and now I'm going to try to identify things like audience. Who is the poem trying to reach? What is she using as far as her method of reaching the audience? Is it pathos, ethos, or logos? And just simply, pathos means comes from the root of the same Latin root as the word pathetic. It means an emotional appeal. Most poetry will be an emotional appeal. Ethos means an ethical appeal, and logos means a logical appeal. Usually logos is grounded in statistics and kind of factual information. Ethos is grounded in what's right and wrong, and pathos is grounded in how does this make you feel. So that's why poetry analysis is usually pathos. Then we get into the examining of what I call the STD, the syntax, the tone, and the diction. Okay, so syntax is structure. Why has the author chosen the structure of the poem a certain way? The tone is the general attitude of the piece. It's morbid, it's somber, it's whimsical, those types of things. And then diction reflects directly on the tone. How does the author's word choice then impact the tone or the overall mood of the poem that the author is trying to get across? Then we want to take the task and identify at least 5 examples of poetic language or figurative language. So if I put here 0 at the bone, the last line of the poem is an example of metaphor. Okay, so I'm then going to briefly explain what I mean by that and then go on to the next one. So you can get an idea of what our purpose is by listing the device and then explaining how and why it is used. And then finally, the last task that I want you to do, I want you to go back after you've read it closely, and I now want you to draw your conclusion. So you're going to do a full response to the poem, about 1 to 2 paragraphs, where you're writing about why this poem is so meaningful, why the poem has such depth to it, etc., going through all of your analysis. So the first time we should do the title, read it once, answer the first couple of questions, and then go through and start picking the poem apart, reading it very closely for the second time, and then read it all again, thinking of the overall concept or meaning of the poem, and then writing a response to it. Like I said, I will include poetic terms. You are going to have to kind of dig through the first time. The good news is Emily Dickinson's poems are usually pretty easy, so your focus will be on the analysis and figuring out how to do it. Next time, the poems will be a little bit more difficult, but you'll be more seasoned at the analysis when we get to Edgar Allan Poe next month. If you have any questions, just list them below.